Hi, I'm John Stevenson. We're going to be talking about that very short little episode of the death and burial of Sarah in Genesis chapter 23 in our continuing study of the book of Genesis. Genesis 23:2, Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is what we call later on Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. After all, this is the death of his, what so far has been his lifelong companion. They're both very on in years. Verse 3, Then Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Give me a burial site among you, that I may bury my dead out of sight. So far, Abraham's been living in the land for quite a number of years. He does not even own enough land to bury his wife. And so he makes arrangements in the ensuing verses to purchase the cave of Machpelah. And it's an Oriental bargaining that we see in which he says, I'd like to have you. He goes to these people of Heth. We're going to call them later on Hittites, but they're not the Hittite Empire. They're a sort of a separate, maybe related people group, but this isn't the empire. This is descendants of Heth. And there's sort of an Oriental sort of bargaining that takes place that if you've never experienced it, it's quite unique. I remember the first time I went to the Middle East and found myself rather unwittingly engaged in this kind of bargaining, in which, first of all, a gift was given, and that makes something obligated, and there's a little bit of one-upmanship going on here, so that eventually the bargain that's desired can be reached. And so Abraham first goes to these people of Heth, and they say, can you go to this Ephron person and sort of make the way for me? And he says, well, I'll just give you the land. And they say, we'll give you whatever land you need. And yet, we're going to find as the passage continues, that's not really their intent. It's not to say it's not sincere, but it's part of a bargaining thing that is part of their culture, and we miss it. We're sort of so removed from that. Our first experience is we're just not sure how to take that. And so Abraham says, no, it's appropriate that I purchase it. And so in the ensuing dialogue that takes place, he ends up paying quite a high price, which evidently the ones with whom he's bargaining actually want that price. That's what they've been after the whole time. And so there's sort of a respectful bargaining. And like I said, it's a little foreign to us. And from that, then, a legal deed is drawn up where now for the first time Abraham comes to own this piece of property on which he's going to bury his wife, and eventually himself, and eventually his son and his son's wife. In fact, we're going to have Jacob, and it's not going to take a lot longer because Joseph is going to die and be buried in Egypt for a time, but after 400 years, when the Israelites come back, they're going to bring the bones of Joseph. So this is going to be a place of promise in which the descendants of Abraham are going to be buried. And it will be for them a lasting possession. Like I said, it's going to be not just Abraham and his wife that will eventually be buried there, but eventually we'll see Jacob. And even though the Israelites, at the time of the death of Jacob, are going to be living in Egypt, they're going to have a big caravan and come back, sort of a big wake would call it, where they're going to all come back to bury Jacob in this land. And what that's saying is that it's promissory because this land will eventually be the land of Abraham. So that what I have here is a promise of the land that is to be possessed many hundreds of years hence. Now there's an interesting comparison to be made. Remember, the king of Sodom had come to Abraham and said, after Abraham had rescued the people of Sodom, he said, give me the people, give the people to me, and take the goods for yourself. And Abraham had responded, I will not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, for fear that you would say that I've made Abram back then, Abram rich. Now with Ephron the Hittite, Ephron had said, I'll give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it, in the presence of the sons of my people. I give it to you, bury your dead. Like I said, that's not really the deal he wants, but that's part of that bargaining that's taking place. And Abraham had responded, I'll give the price of the field, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Now the question, why does Abraham make it a point not to accept anything from the people of the land? Why is he insistent, I must pay for it? I believe that the answer is because he has the promise of God, and it will be God who will be the one who's going to give him the land, not the hand of any other human agency. He is trusting in the Lord. He's not trusting in his own bargaining technique. He's not trusting in the gifts of others. He's trusting in the Lord, and the Lord has promised that the Lord will give him the land.